why in the world do I have to verify my identity with somebody where I never verified with my identity in the first place, just to get them to remove something that I don't want, that they're publishing and is up high on Google when somebody Googles my name.
Welcome to the Cybrary podcast.
Well, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome
back.
Welcome. Well, welcome back.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Ryan Corey, CEO and co-founder of Cybrary, and I'm excited for you to join us on today's episode. Let's jump in.
Hi, welcome everyone back to another episode of the Cybrary podcast. Today we're joined by Rob from Abeen. This is Mike Gruen, your host, CISO and VP of Engineering here at Cybrary. And Rob, why don't you give a quick introduction about you and your company?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. So the company, Abeen, has two products. One's called Blur and the other's called Delete Me. And we are the online privacy company, which means that everything we do relates to protecting people's privacy. And we've been doing it for about 10 years. And I can tell you that this being the 10th year, it has never been more popular. There's never been a more popular time in our company's history to talk about privacy. And happy to be here to do that.
Yeah, and I was definitely checking out your products. And I apologize, I don't know if I went with the Abeen or Abeen pronunciation, which I know we talked offline about. Maybe give a quick little history on the name of the company itself.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell. I should tell everybody that listens, if there are any entrepreneurs out there, please save yourself a lot of headache and name your company something that everybody pronounces the same way. I plan on my next company to make sure I do that. We started the company. We didn't really have a name for it, and we had an acronym called that we used, which we called Abeen, which stood for "A bit is not enough." And what we were describing was the situation 10 years ago of these sort of privacy technologies, whether it was a VPN or an ad blocker or disposable email service or something that went and removed some of your information. There are all these little utilities out there that, frankly, a lot of the, let's say, politically correct, the politically correct term would be very computer literate people would use, and regular people would struggle to figure out what the heck to do with them. And so we said, hey, a bit is not enough. A bit of these tools here and there are not enough and they're too hard to use. Let's create a company that brings them together and gives people a more simple way to get some privacy when they go online. And so that was the derivation of the name, and we called it Abeen, but most of our customers decided to pronounce it a different way, Abeen. So then we had to relearn how we pronounced our own name. So again, my point stands. Try to choose a name if you're choosing one, be it for a child of yours or a company that most people can pronounce.
Yeah, absolutely. It always makes me think because we've talked about it before. Marriott is a good example of a company who struggles where it's not pronounced the way it's supposed to, but I think they've given up. But yeah, in looking at your product offering, I think Blur really caught my eye because while over the years, I mean, for more than a decade, I've had password managers and all these different things. And it was sort of cool to see all of these different things in one. And one of the aspects that really caught my eye the most was the virtual credit card and being able to generate one per. We do that internally here at Cybrary. We have it's offered by our bank to be able to generate like one a new credit card number for every single vendor. That's how we do it. Each with their own credit limits and all these other things. I was curious how it sort of works for Blur and with my, how would it work with my bank or I'm just curious how it sort of all comes together.
Good question. So our Blur product gives people the ability to make these credit cards, virtual credit cards, which we call masked credit cards, ironically in the middle of this pandemic. At any time they want, whenever they're clicking into a checkout form, and that moment where you click in and are about to type in your credit card, our software will pop up and say, hey, do you want to autofill your real credit card if you've put that into our software, or would you prefer to make a one-time use or mask card, which not only protects your privacy, it protects your security, because if that merchant is hacked and there's data breach, you don't care, because that card is gone. They can steal it all they want and try to use it, but there's no more value typically left on it, because you match the value of the transaction typically to the value of the card that you make. And that principle is not just about privacy; it's about controlling your data. And we do the same thing with email and the same thing with phone numbers. A lot of us are tired of getting spam, and a lot of us are tired of getting telemarketing and robocalls, especially in this political environment. And if you don't, it's amazing, but a pretty simple concept. If you stop giving out your real personal private information as much to everyone that asks for it, where you don't know what the heck they're going to do with it, you reduce their ability to spam you, sell your information to other people that spam you, and on down the line. So those are some of the concepts there. And that's where people really like the credit card and other masked credential features, because it doesn't just give them privacy, which it does, but it gives them control over their data in a way that they haven't typically had it before.
And also with the masked email addresses, it also gives you an added level of security. That's I've been using masked email addresses essentially for as long as I've owned my own domain. So every single site that I log into gets its own email address that's unique to it. So I can in addition to the security aspect, which I'll get to, but it also lets me have control over, like, if they start sending me emails, I can filter those. I can decide whether or not I want them to go through or go directly to the garbage. It also lets me know, I remember back in whenever Circuit City went out of business in the 90s, I very quickly realized they had sold my email address to somebody because it was considered an asset that they could sell. And so I started to get spam at, Circuit City, the Circuit City email address. So it gives you that level of control. And then also because every single place I log in uses it's not just a different password, it's a whole different email address combination. It gives you that extra set of security as well, which I think is awesome. It's just a great sort of approach to the whole system because it covers so much.
You sound like the typical well-informed CTO person that has been doing this well before we started to productize this. And what we wanted to do is really take those best practices that people like you were doing and make it easy enough for our aunts, uncles, and us normal folk to use. And in our dashboard, for example, if you go look up your masked email addresses or your masked credit cards that you've made, there's a giant button which you can move on each one of them from red to green, which says turn on, turn off. And it also tells you how many emails or how many charges each of those cards or emails received from different vendors. So if somebody is sending you, 35 messages a week and spamming the heck out of you or trying to charge you all the time, you just turn it off. And it's just a beautiful level of control, I find. And there's other products that do this, not just ours, but I just think it's the right way to try to manage your data these days, is to just give out less of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and I was on a recently recorded podcast, I don't think it's aired yet. A few of us were talking about this in the context of point of sale systems. And I was mentioning how my system totally broke down when I went to a Lego Fair, type place where there were all these individual vendors and they had the little square and swiped my card, and I gave them, the email address I wanted to use for that vendor. So they had some unique email address and they swiped my card. Everything was fine. And then like a month later was at a coffee shop, used that same credit card, gave them a different email address, but yet I got an email receipt to the Lego email address because they knew that the first time they saw that credit card number was with this email address, and they both happened to be using the point of sale system, was both the same system. And it's like, ooh, I don't want, the whole point of all of these different things is to keep all of this data separate and make it harder for companies to sort of put it back together. And so I that caught me a little off guard of like, oh yeah, here's this credit card processor they must both be sharing that somehow now has linked these two email addresses and these two versions of me. So it's cool that you guys have a product that sort of solves it all in one.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a really good example of sort of the sad state of affairs on the internet today. Or if you're a marketer, how awesome the internet is.
Well, exactly. It depends. It's all about perspective, isn't it? I mean, like, I also know, the same is true for loyalty cards and all sorts of other different things that you don't really think about, but that sort of track your purchase. Now, your credit card company has all this information about you. It knows where you shop. It knows what you buy. It has all of that. It knows your email address. It is kind of this awesome, awe-inspiring thing. It makes me think a little bit of the Harry Potter, like great things, terrible things, but great things type of scenario where they can do amazing things. It's just mostly terrible.
Definitely. And I think it's important to bring up that, personally, and, at our company, even though we're a privacy company, we're not, sort of religious zealots about what people should do or could do. I think there's way too many security companies that build things and then they say, this is what people should do. And why are they doing it? Why are they still reusing their passwords? We're so upset. We're so excellent. And, we understand people are people. They're busy. This is not like the primary reason they go online is not to control their data and get privacy. It's sort of like a byproduct of what they're trying to do. And so it is important like that to know that there are a lot of people, myself included, that we're contextual. Some people we want to share our data with. Some people we want our data to be linked up easily. And we get a lot of benefit of that, just like you were talking about the Harry Potter example. And I think the important thing, or where the web needs to go in the next 10 years, isn't that everybody needs to be anonymous again, like they were in 1995 or something with a username and nobody was tracking anything, but rather we need to make it much more transparent what these trade-offs are. Mm-hmm. Right now, we register for a new website or we buy something, and all this stuff that you were talking about that happened with your credit card swiping happens without our knowledge, secretly on the back end, where all these technologies are correlating our data and linking them up and not telling us, and then selling it behind our back and not giving us a discount for it or whatever. And we really have to the conversation needs to move up a bunch of notches around the transparency of this stuff. And then I think you're going to find that people are pretty rational, and they're going to go allow their data to be shared a lot of times. And then, people they don't trust, they're going to want privacy. And I think that's the way the world should work. It just doesn't work that way today.
Right. And a lot of it's not just the transparency, it's that level of control. And I think, there's a lot of different things that are trying to work in there. On the one side, yeah, I understand why you'd want to link in that same podcast. We were sort of talking about another example of why targeted advertising isn't the worst thing in the world and why being anonymous kind of can be bad. So I have children. By me putting all of the same privacy things on their accounts that I put on my own, they're just sort of treated as a generic adult. Which means that whatever seems to be trending for adults is what gets advertised to them. So, they'll see ads for The Walking Dead or other things that maybe really aren't the best thing for them to be seeing. And maybe if both I had trust in these other systems and those other systems, sort of if we could connect it all together, it actually creates a much better world where my kid can be online. The systems that we trust know that it's a child, and therefore is advertising appropriately to them, like, back in the day in the 70s, 80s, and 90s with Saturday morning cartoons and what could and could not be shown, to a kid. And so there's these trade-offs, and sometimes they're, on the positive side. So I tend to agree that it's not just about, oh, I want everything to be anonymous and we should go back to the 90s. It's that fine line of, no, there's certain companies I want to trust. I want to give them that information because I want them to give me that tailored experience. And then, it's all about control and transparency, which I think, Europe and GDPR really gets a lot into. And we were sort of talking, I was talking among some colleagues about GDPR and what its effect is, and how, it's this weird, interesting thing of taking cyberspace, which is abstract and without borders in theory, but it maps down to actual physical locations, whether it's citizens or where data is located and data is stored. And so now, as we go into this abstract world, or go between them, and there's just more and more how GDPR and how countries and cultures are going to have to, how companies are going to have to exist and adhere to all these different cultural norms and standards across the world, where, in some parts of the world, the government owns the data. In other parts of the world, we firmly believe the user, the person, owns their data. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm not, I guess my real belief is that we're going to fragment into two internets. One, it's going to be much like the Cold War, because I've spent a bunch of time in China, and unfortunately, I don't think they're backing down on their path to be able to have total surveillance, largely because of the internet across their entire society and the societies that are linked up to them in business arrangements, Russia and so forth. And, I don't see a détente happening between these online worlds that are being created. And you see it today in the media, all the way down to who's selling the infrastructure to enable the internet. Is it Huawei or is it a Cisco? And, and who's got the undersea cable? So it really, it goes all the ways from the cybersphere down to the physical cabling and wiring and componentry and chipsets that enable us to have these, remote podcasts and conversations and everything else. And I think I see it bifurcating into a total surveillance, area. I won't go as far as calling it communist, but sort of enlightened communist sort of surveillance internet, and one that with respect to the GDPR and what I believe will be similar federal legislation coming down the pike in the U.S. and in the U.K. And we see it now in Brazil and in other countries here in the West too, where citizens' rights to a layer of privacy and control over their data are going to be much better defined and much easier for them to take advantage of.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Although sometimes I think it might be even more than just two. I sort of think through what, that the U.S. and even the U.S.'s approach and Europe's approach may be different enough where maybe it's not completely separated, but at some point I may have to have a Cybrary that's running in Europe that's sort of just for European, just so to make it easier to sort of manage against those laws versus the U.S. laws, which are going to be different and maybe different enough. And then, obviously, if there's really contradictory, there's just no way to make these two things work, separating them out. And it just might make sense to have multiple instances of what should be a single platform running across the globe. But just because of the laws governing that user, that citizen,
you may be absolutely right. I think the only good news there is that technology will make it much easier to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cloud technology. I mean, I think it's funny because on the one hand, it's not a world that I like. It's not really the vision I want, right? I would much prefer the sort of, utopian global, everything's connected, but at the same time, there's the realities of, well, whose cultural norms should be running the internet? And I can see everybody else's perspective of maybe ours isn't the norms that everybody else wants, especially as legislators try to push through encryption backdoors in the US that maybe other countries don't want. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be a point of contention that continues to come up, and it has a lot of implications, both for children. As you mentioned, what are they seeing, and what kind of bubbles are being created for them in their digital environments, as well as political process, as well as all the stuff that a government can do with their citizens. And this is one of those areas where I tend to believe there is a right and a wrong, and that freedoms really do need to be there for people in their digital lives, which are increasingly generating data about their entirety of their life. And people that don't have those freedoms are going to be worse off.
Yeah, I mean, I also think a lot in terms of like the way the internet is structured, the way things work. It is not possible for a government to it's nearly impossible for a government to completely control it. And so there will be, whether you call it the black web or the dark web or whatever you want to call it, there will always be something where the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers, the more people will find the more demand there'll be for these other things, and the easier it'll be or more prevalent it'll be for people to find them. I don't know if you figured it out. I only speak in analogies. Or movie quotes. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how things sort of play out, across cyberspace as it bleeds into the real world. And we were sort of talking about GDPR, and one of your other products definitely helps with compliance with the Delete Me product. And you and I were talking a little bit about, before we went live, about how, as somebody who's running running a website, a SaaS platform, we get GDPR requests all the time. We've built in functionality into our application. You go in, you authenticate, you delete your account, we completely delete it, compliant with the law. And that's our version of the right to be forgotten. But I also receive any number of emails. They've definitely gone down in volume. When GDPR first came out, there were just tons of emails we were getting regularly saying, delete my information. This is my email address. And there were a couple of frustrating things about those emails. One was that the email specifically said, do not contact the person at this email address. They were almost always sent by some third-party service. There was no way for me to authenticate or verify that the request had come from the person from the account being requested. I'm curious, you have this Delete Me product. How do you sort of see that? How do you guys deal with that? Am I doing the right thing by ignoring those emails and saying we have a built-in feature, just log in and delete your account?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think there's a part of these kinds of email requests that a lot of companies are getting from citizens of the EU and also from now residents of California in the U.S. That sort of have a veneer of legality that people believe. I don't go on Facebook much, but I do have a Facebook account, and I remember seeing people post with this sort of legal disclaimer saying, underneath their post saying, none of this information can be used by anybody else. I have copyright over it. And, there's this other long illegalese under it. And, Facebook does not have the right. And you're like, okay, you probably need to go back to your first year of law school because you signed a term of service to be here. And, we had a long fight with Facebook when they originally came out about they had a policy where they made you use your real name. You could not technically legally create a Facebook account with an abbreviated name or a pseudonym or anything else. Now, in practice, they didn't really police it, but just the fact that they wanted to require it goes back to your question of what should a service be able to enforce around identity verification and around an account. And I think, number one, a lot of these emails, just like these Facebook legal disclaimers, are probably not legally compliant either with the regulations or or anything else. So they probably, by the letter of the law, my guess is, obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. I never planned. Right. I never planned to be one. But my guess is that those don't carry the same weight that a properly configured subject access request with verification of that subject's identity would. And now we're getting into a little of the technicalities of the GDPR. But the point is, I think on a broad scale, a lot of countries, the EU and all of its member countries, and some states in the US, and hopefully the entire US, at least we hope, are creating these laws. And the laws enshrine certain rights for consumers. And one of those rights is, hey, you have the right to ask for what data a company has about you. And you have the right to then potentially limit what that company can do with that data and or opt out or delete it, depending on what you want to do. And the question that you're really asking is, how should we, if we're a company and we're receiving those requests from our customers, how should we handle those? And there's new companies that have been spun up in the privacy space that are that have these things called consent managers, which do all this kind of identity verification things for you. And the customers are sort of frustrated today. They're saying, well, why can't I just send an email with, because it's much easier for me. Why do I have to go through this, all of these hoops and, go enter some of my information in, and you might even be reusing that information to update your database and then verify my identity just so I can have it removed. And I think this is, our Delete Me service deals with this because in many cases, we either act on behalf of the customer with their consent to go effect an opt-out, or we help them with our sort of do-it-yourself processes to help them understand what to do. And in all cases, we do have to respect today the verification methodologies that are in place, and they're different at every company. I'm sure they're different. What you set up at Cybrary is different from what we have to deal with Spokio, which is different when we remove somebody from white pages and everything else. And it's one of the problems that I think is due to an immature new set of laws and an immature set of technologies that are trying to put those laws into practice on both sides of a marketplace, the customer side and the business side. And I hope that those will get better.
Right. And I hope that there's some standardization around it, right? Like I understand, and I'm grateful that GDPR did not include like prescriptive, this is how a user must be able to delete their information from your system. Like that would have been terrible because lawmakers are great at technology. I'm sure they'd get it right. But it would just, so there's no way that they could do that. And so I'm glad that they just left it at a user needs to be able to do this thing. And I'm just saying, well, we know like users have to authenticate with us. We're not going to delete everything they've ever learned or everything we know about them, which is all of the training that they've taken on our platform. We're not going to take that lightly and just delete it because we received some email asking it to be deleted, when I know it's very, very easy to spoof an email and make it look like it came from someone and it didn't come from. And so we just say, log in, re-log in and re-authenticate. It's definitely a challenge for some of our legacy users, especially when I go back and think the company started in 2015. I joined in 2017. And in the early days, we didn't even require people verify their email address. So there's a number of people who probably have no real ability to delete their account from our platform because they can't log in anymore. They don't know the password, and whatever bogus email address they gave to us, they can't use for forgot password. On the one hand, what do we really know about them? They gave us all this fake information, so it's impossible for us to link it back to who they really are. And also, we've been in the process of purging all those records anyway. We've sort of gone over the last couple of years. We've replatformed. We're doing all of these things. Eventually, we're just going to say, hey, if you haven't logged in a couple of years, chances are we don't really care about your data, and neither do you, and we'll just delete it anyway. So that's sort of the direction we're going.
I think that's the right direction. It's exactly the one we've taken here at our company, where if you're inactive for a certain amount of time, we figure it's best not to have your data. Right. But I think, I think you're doing the right things from what I can tell. And I do hope that it gets better, and there's more standards and there's more easy to use ways to affect these preferences that you have. It is just to come back to our Delete Me service,
right?
One of the things that's really different about it and frustrating to no end for us and our customers is that for most of what we're removing our Delete Me customers from, and we remove them from dozens and dozens of different data brokers, is that they never created an account. They literally never created an account. So these data brokers have scraped together profiles that are very rich, that have the information, all correlated about a particular person, their past addresses, their ages. They have photos of their home, their kids and their relatives, names and ages, all this stuff that you can use for, all kinds of things, identity theft, guessing passwords, you name it. Right. And it's all there. And most of the data brokers, scraped it for free and then are selling it for, $10 a month or, 50 cents for a single record or whatever. And our customers are saying, why in the world do I have to verify my identity with somebody where I never verified with my identity in the first place, just to get them to remove something that I don't want, that they're publishing and is up high on Google when somebody Googles my name. So there's a lot of complexities to this business of deletion, opt-out, where's my data, who has it, that we're still in the process of figuring out as a society.
Yeah, and I think that's where GDPR, like when I think about what GDPR really was targeting, was not companies like Cybrary and what we do with our users' data, which is we track what learning you did. Like we're not in the business of making money off of the data we track about our users. We're in the business of trying to give you the best experience we can based on what we know about what your interests are in cybersecurity and IT, career development. And so, but where it gets, where I think things get really messy is in those third parties where you start bringing in some company that's going to help you do entity resolution or any type of entity enrichment from a sales perspective, where you're adding additional attributes like, oh, well, this person provided me this email address and this name. There's whole companies out there that are based on, well, we'll take that and we'll tell you where they work. We'll tell you who their boss is. We'll tell you their phone number, their job title, the rest, all of this other information. And they're not just scraping public data. They're getting it because companies use their platform. Other companies are using their platform. And now they're in this position where they can see a more global view and aggregate data from all of their different customers into one user profile. And again, it's the same thing. Like I never told, that aggregator that I'm okay with, my relationship is with Cybrary, not with the company Cybrary uses to do some data processing that you guys have decided as a data processor, you're going to take advantage of your position and commingle all of this different data from all of your customers. And I think that's where I'm really happy to see GDPR. And I think that's where it was really focused, was on that sort of second party that's doing some of these things behind the scenes.
I think that's right. And, I can just tell you, we live and breathe this fight every day with Delete Me. And, we give away, we have a free guide on our site that literally tells anyone who shows up exactly what we're doing. It's not rocket science. It's just that we're saving people so much time for $129 a year that they get frustrated, they break down, and they just pay us to do it because we can do it faster, we can do it better, and we can do it continuously. But these sites are so good at getting data and so unconcerned, at least here in the US today, about doing it as aggregators, as data brokers. It is very, very frustrating. And I'll tell you, I was emailing back and forth with the CEO of one of these major data brokers. I won't name the company, mylife.com, who I know. And, we've sat down and had beers together before. And he literally believes that most people want their profile on his site, even though they never created it. Right. And so if that's where we're starting, between a version of, hey, we should be able to control our information, and where the CEOs of these data broker aggregator companies are, we've got a very long way to find an equilibrium.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that I appreciate because of the laws and is that it does make it easier for me in my role as the person who's in charge, responsible for vetting all of the technology that we use. It makes it much easier for me to feel more comfortable with we're going to use that vendor. This is their data processing agreement. I know what we're doing. I know that they're not going to take our users' data and use it in these nefarious ways. I'm a big privacy advocate. I wear a tinfoil hat in my spare time. There's nothing more important to me than the privacy of our users and the trust they put in us. And I go back to my last job where I was lucky enough, we weren't really dealing with these types of problems. We didn't have a B2C offering. Everything, it was an enterprise product. But even there were some companies that we, Salesforce, we want to get certain plugins. We want to be able to do lead scoring. We want to be able to do this enrichment. And it did make me feel very uncomfortable about how do I know if they're able to supply us this information? Where are they getting that information from? Well, it must be from people like us giving it to them. And so, they can't just be scraping LinkedIn and other things to get this data, although that's probably one of their main sources.
My recommendation, which is probably unsurprising, both the businesses and consumers here, is hey, you need to make sure there's awareness about this, because I'm sure that Cybrary has competitors that are offering free courses, and consumers that are taking those free courses and creating accounts at the free course competitors need to also understand that free isn't free. And if you're getting this stuff free, you're the product. Right. And I do think more people understand that now. But businesses like yours and others that are doing the right thing and have a great product and offer it at a fair price need to continue to remind the mass market out there that that's a differentiator. It is literally better to do business with us than to do business with those free scammy guys, at this other URL.
Right. Although I will, just to make be clear, we do offer some freemium. We do have a freemium model, but the idea is we offer some of the videos, the other things that we can for free, with the idea being give you a sense of the value that you can get, upgrade the videos themselves that we're offering for free. We can do that for free, not because we use it as like a lead into the rest of the product. We can show you value. We believe that by allowing you to take some of the stuff for free, you should be able to try it, test it, and then decide for yourself whether or not to upgrade. Right? We don't have a completely free platform with, as soon as we start having to spend money on you, that's the point at which we have to consider videos we can, and content are pretty low cost for us to deliver. It's once you switch into the next gear where you're doing the hands-on training, that costs us money. That's where we need to make sure that we're collecting something. But yes, I agree. Like if there's a completely free service, it's not completely free. Gmail is not free. It comes at a cost. And I don't think people realize what that cost is.
100%. And we have a freemium model too. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with freemium.
Right.
But if a service is 100% free and you find yourself using it, scratch your head.
Right. Actually, I saw what was it, the Social Dilemma. One of the guys on there was talking about how it's no longer just that you're the product. It's actually your time that's the product. That's what they're harvesting. That's what it's the idea of they just want your time and your eyeballs and your attention. That's what they're actually getting for free. By offering it for free. And I thought that was another interesting twist on the whole free versus paid services. Anyway, any other thoughts about like Delete Me and sort of what differentiates it and how you? I'm curious. Like it's one of those products that definitely is really intriguing to me. I think because I wear that tinfoil hat. Any other thoughts or things about it?
Well, I think we're seeing a tremendous influx of people becoming customers of Delete Me because they see when they Google their own name or their friends or family's name, how easy it is to see all this information right there on the front page of Google. And it is almost always, sure, we might have a LinkedIn link up there, or we might have been mentioned in a positive way at a charity, at our alma mater, high school or college or something, and all those links on the web tend to be fine. But the vast majority of people's online results on Google are now dominated by these data brokers saying, "Hey, check out Mike's total profile, all his email addresses, his phone numbers, his children's ages, his and then they, of course, they take it further because they're marketers, and they go, check out his criminal record. His does he have a sexual predator profile? Do a background check. All these words that are scary, but get people to buy. It's just atrocious in a way. But I think what people see out there now is that these companies have, done an incredible job at not just marketing this data high up on Google results, but also pulling it together in a way where it is accurate to a degree where most people are uncomfortable. Why should it be free for somebody to get all of my past, 8 addresses, whether I'm married or not, whether I've been divorced, what my, parents' ages and names are? It just doesn't feel right. And at the same time, the service that we have to plug in a little bit does do an effective job of cleaning it up, and we do it all year long, and you don't have to worry about it. So that's what's driving both the bad part of it, which is there's more of this information publicly searchable and available about all of us, and the good part of it, which is we can do something about it today, and tomorrow, when more legislation is passed, we'll be able to be even more effective.
No, that's awesome. And I definitely applaud the effort and appreciate companies like yourselves out there making it a lot easier for everyone else so they don't have to go through at this point, I'm sort of well entrenched into my systems. The idea of replacing some of them on the anonymity side of things and privacy side of things, but no one should have to go through what I go through. It should be a lot easier, and I'm super appreciative of companies like you that are out there. So thanks for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to talking to you again.
Likewise, and we will. Our employees and internal team will be signing up and checking out some of the free and paid offerings that you guys have at Cybrary, because it's important that we all keep up with our skill sets and our education. And it's actually something that I think is important for every company, is just constantly be making sure there's time to learn and to train on the most recent skills. So thanks for having me.
Yep, definitely. And one more time, what's the website for your company?
If you're interested in learning more about Delete Me, it's joindeleteme.com. And the parent company, our privacy company, is called Abine. Is it just at abine.com, abine.com.
Awesome. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.